All right, welcome everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. Bailey, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Backus?
Here.
Councilmember Bain? Here. Councilmember Husnick?
Here.
Councilmember Eigner?
Here.
Mayor Winnick?
Here. I'd like to ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I'll look for some motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. That brings us to open forum. Thank you, Bailey. Susan Young.
Susan Young, 9950 199th Street North. I was in the EDA meeting, or listened to the EDA meeting in the audience this evening. And while I understand the desire of the EDA to look at the potential for purchasing ag land and developing it into shovel-ready projects, we as a city don't have a great history of buying land and selling it at either a break-even or at a profit. If the EDA, as I understood this evening from the mayor, has plenty of money to be making these purchases of property and doing the shovel-ready work to finance those kinds of things. Another aspect of the EDA's work plan is the redevelopment of our downtown. And I would certainly hope that the EDA and the council will be looking at opportunities to be innovative and bold in cracking that parking nut that we have down there, and dealing with parking issues so that then private redevelopment can happen on the rest of our downtown area. I hope that as you are pursuing the potential for this ag land to a shovel-ready industrial land, that you will also have as a very high priority looking at the possibilities for the downtown area. Thank you.
All right. Ellen, did you want to defer to?
Yes, sir.
All right. Bob Rick?
Am I on the agenda?
You signed up for open forum to speak if you'd like to. You don't have to if you don't want to, but.
It's Bob. Bob Rick, 6895 Scandia Trail North, across from Stella's. I guess about a month and a half ago, my wife and I received a letter from the city regarding a very old sewer assessment that went across our side of Highway 97. We've had previously the sewer assessment that was done came from 1987. We've previously worked with the city in about 21 years after that, which would have made it like 2008, 2009. The assessment was originally for $6,070, which was part of a seven-party. 7 people were assessed back in '87. I believe we're the only ones, or we are the only ones, who are left with a grandfathered-in assessment that had been running between the years, those 21 years, 87 up to 2009. Unbeknownst to us, and although we've requested again in the most recent go-around, we received another letter 2 months ago, nearly 10 years after the first letter that we received. The problem being that there was no original billing, no original notice back in '87, none. We searched for it, and we've asked the city clerk's office to search for it this go-around. Back in 2009, we were grandfathered in and asked the city council at that time to give us some abatement on the 8% per year interest. And we talked to Steve Stegner and the city council at that time. And then we asked that at least there be some kind of a compromise that could come up so that we could pay the nearly 3 times what the original $6,000 bill was. And we did receive the go-ahead to remain as grandfathered in, and we did then come to council, and we were denied any opportunity then to try to maybe come to some negotiation or compromise on the nearly $12,000 of interest that had been added over those years. Well, we're back. It seems like we've got another 30 days to go. This time, the nearly $22,000, almost 4 times the original, is now being considered to be placed upon the property. The property itself is 5 acres. As I say, it's across from Stella's. It used to be Ensrud's farmstead. We've been in and out of Green Acres a few times. There's really no development there. It is Green Acres for all intents and purposes. But like 20 years ago, off came the Green Acres for some reason or another. We've always paid our property tax on it. It's residential homesteaded. And each year we get the property tax bill and it says, no special assessments, just residential homestead. We pay $2,000 and $3,000 a year on those 5 acres. So I guess I just wanted to bring that to the council. We'll present our request for some negotiation and perhaps compromise to get this bill paid sometime within the next couple of weeks. We've got another 3 weeks, I guess, to actually resolve it and pay. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'll just ask staff to, maybe we need a report on this and invite Mr. Rick back for.
Yeah, let me
workshop.
comment. We just found out about this afternoon, and we've been working on that. We will come up with a solution and talk to the gentleman's attorney, which has contacted us, and try to figure out a solution, so.
All right, thank you. Jeff Klein.
Hello, Jeff Klein, 227 Ideal Avenue North. I'll make this brief. I just wanted to, since it's the election tomorrow, I wanted to give a quick thank you to all you guys sitting up there. Mara, Sam, I just want to say thanks for everything you've done the last couple of years. And the most exciting thing is no matter what happens in the election, you'll both still be there after the election, so that is excellent. Blaine, I know you were appointed for what people thought was a specific reason. I just want to say thanks. Once that initial few meetings passed, you proved to be a thoughtful and, well, you listened very well, and I think you made a thoughtful councilman, so hopefully that doesn't define you, and we'll see you in the future. Ed, Mr. Agner, I'll call you Ed. I said it to you 6-8 years ago. I said, I don't agree with anything you do politically, but you're still a guy I would like to have a beer with and go fishing with, and that's still true today, so take that for what it's worth. And Mr. Mayor, Ben, for you, I would just say, I remember about 18 months ago, I was hoping that you would take a different course with the police action. And my main point was I didn't want that to define you your entire life. So that's why I asked you to take a step back, because I knew the direction it was going regardless. So I wanted you to be the one to do that. So I still, to this day, I hope that doesn't define you in life. So thank you, and you've put up with a lot in the last couple of years. So good luck with everything you do in the future. So thank you, everyone.
And that ends open forum. So I will look for a motion on the consent agenda or changes there too.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, pulling 6B, just for a real quick update on that.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that takes us back to item 6B.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it was just a dumb thing that I was looking at the council minutes on page number 4, and it seems to me that you were probably, well, or at least intending to abstain from the motion to pay the Winnick invoices. So it's just a really fine point of,
Oh.
it's on page 4 of the minutes there. So I'd like to make that correction to the minutes.
I'll second the corrected minutes.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Or should I abstain too?
No, you're voting on the correction. That's the important.
Okay, that brings us to the regular agenda. And we have a swearing in. I lost my sheet. There we go.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, good evening. It is a great honor to formally introduce you and our community to our newly hired police officer, Tristan Forstner. Tristan was one of 60 applicants taking 2 separate written exams, interviewed by 2 separate interview panels, and took a physical agility test before being selected for a very thorough background investigation, which also included a medical exam, a psychological exam, before being selected as a police officer for the Forest Lake Police Department. The entire hiring process took approximately 3 months. Officer Forstner's first day of employment was on October 8th, and he is in the beginning stages of our field training program and will continue in that capacity through the end of the year. This is an important and exciting moment in any police officer's career, where an officer is formally sworn into office by reciting the oath of office in front of our city council, their families, friends, and community members. Mr. Mayor, if you could do the honor of formally swearing in Officer Tristan Forstner.
Or maybe get a little closer to the microphone. I ask you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Tristan Forstner,
I, Tristan Forstner,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
with and for the city of Forest Lake in the state of Minnesota.
with and for the city of Forest Lake in the state of Minnesota.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Just like to invite Tristan, family members, and community members upstairs to the Clear Lake Room for some light refreshments. And thank you very much.
All right, take care. I'll give them a minute to clear out.
No.
He looks like you can handle it well.
All right, Donovan, you want to take us through 7B appeal?
Yes, sir. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to present something that is somewhat unusual within our official proceedings. This relates to a disposition of a determination of what constitutes a driveway on a property. The properties are located on Bay Drive Southeast, 1120 and 1132. So shown here with shoreline onto the channel, at that intersection of 11th Avenue Southeast and Bay Drive Southeast. Within this, the staff is basically facilitating an appeal. Staff believe that this was the construction was a concrete driveway. The property owners state that that's an error, that is instead it's a hardscaped space for erosion control and social area for the two neighbors. And this went before the Planning Commission, and they unanimously affirmed the zoning administrator's, my determination as a driveway, and then the property owners appealed that decision. So it's before you today to then make the deciding vote on whether what was constructed is a driveway, or is it, in the property owner's view, a erosion control or shared hardscape space. The story begins in 2010, when the northern property did construct some driveways, extra parking space within the right-of-way and on the property. That was in 2010. In 2010, in 2011, that was removed. And here's some photos from that time of that original construction. And then we go forward to 2015, and here we see the area, the two houses. That's property to the north, the property to the south, and it's just gravel and a small tree in between there. In mid-August, the city received a complaint that more concrete was installed. This is what it looks like as of August of 2018. Staff responded with a couple enforcement letters requiring the concrete be removed. And after some conversation, then the property owners appealed. Part of what's at stake here is that there is currently no driveway definition within the city code. However, there is a phrase within code that a provision that states that words and phrases shall be taken in their plain or ordinary and usual sense. And so that was part of my determination, taking this as a driveway, seeing it could be used for car storage, and looks rather similar to the other concrete areas on each of the properties. And within the zoning code, no driveway is allowed within 5 feet of the property line, and the property line runs essentially down the middle of this area. And so that's what the zoning enforcement letter stated, that concrete needed to be removed, that the property to the south here, the property on the left, was also having an excessive amount of impervious surface. And then as well, there's about 8.8 feet of concrete within the public right-of-way, which was not permitted. And there's officially no paving permit that I can find within the fee schedule or the, within the zoning code. And that was subject of some conversation with the Planning Commission. Perhaps that might be something that, City Council might look at in a future time. And then also, I'd like to present the timeline in which, after contact, after the applicants, the property owners received a letter, between August 23rd and then September 4th, there was some back and forth, and during this period of time, it took about, that period of time from the 23rd to the 4th for the hardscape space explanation and the erosion control explanation to be written, communicated. And in this case, Mr. Yella, one of the property owners, called it a shared outdoor hardscape space. and also that it provides erosion control from the large volume of water that comes off the road and runs between the houses. That was also something that they described during the Planning Commission meeting. I followed up with Dave Adams from Public Works, and he has not received a complaint from the property owners nor neighboring property owners that water does come off the street onto this property. And so this is the photo that was submitted by the property owners of what they call the shared outdoor space. The erosion control would relate to what they identify as this is the previous condition, basically gravel through here and that is rutted. And then another photo, this is looking uphill then. And also like to mention that as shown in this survey from 2002, that on the northern property, which has a similar slope, there is a gap between the house and a detached garage. So this is the area that's currently has the concrete here. But in this area, has a similar slope, and there were terrace walls installed to control any sort of runoff or prevent erosion, which is the common method we found within sites all over the city where there, of course, there is slope and homeowners do need to control any kind of erosion. The appellants also alleged that there's been some foundation damage from water. And this is what the slope currently looks like with the new concrete, with the lake beyond there. And part of this was somewhat confusing to me as to, well, let me just stay here, that upon re-examination, it looks like there's some piece of the concrete that could remain as something of a concrete apron on the northern property that's outside the 5-foot setback. But that there's no place on the southern property where that similar concrete could remain and still be 5 feet outside of the property line, or not in the front of the properties or within the right-of-way, where it wouldn't be permitted per zoning code or Public Works. And just as a detail, there was a 30% impervious surface allowed for the southern property after it was rebuilt following a fire. But it appears that the slope was paved to help facilitate the construction of a shed and perhaps relocating a fish house onto the property following that concrete installation. And so in response, the appellants did submit this photo that shows how they did remove some of the concrete within the right-of-way, which also shows kind of a cross-section, I'll zero in on that one, of the construction of this, which I'm told does contain rebar and is 6 inches thick, which seems far beyond the need for a shared outdoor space, and more like what one would use for vehicle parking. And so before you are a couple findings of fact. Each of those represent the opportunity for council to either affirm or overturn the Planning Commission affirmation of the zoning administrator's determination that this construction was a driveway. And so each of them is written to that for council to either fill in the reasons why they find it is a driveway, or how, in their view, this is not a driveway. I'm happy to take any questions from council now.
Donovan, where are the utilities? Is there an easement involved here?
There's no easement on the property.
There's no utilities underneath the concrete?
Not that I'm aware of. The no public utilities, I'll say.
Before we get into discussion, Alan, did you want to come up and speak now, or?
Yes, sir. Thank you in advance for your time this evening. It's much appreciated. Once again, my name is Alan Yell. Middle name is Chris Yell. Also, it's on some of the documentation. If Donovan, if you could pull up the information here in front of us. So this information was provided to the zoning the Planning Zoning Commission that we met with back on October 10th. And if you could go to page 2. And before I go into some of this information that we have provided here in front of you, I question why we refer back to this time frame of 2010 on an item that was covered in 2010 on the property adjacent to ours at 1120. We moved into the property at 1120 Bay Drive in September of 2017. So the relevance of something that happened 7 years prior to us living at the property, I believe, is unrelevant. So if we look back to that second slide there, one of the points that we talked about is erosion control, why this concrete was put in. The water runoff comes off of Bay Drive Southeast. There's 2 points that are indicated by the arrows on your screen, that it comes off of Bay Drive, it flows across the driveway of 1120. What doesn't flow across the driveway, it runs alongside the gutter and then comes back onto the driveway of 1120 and then flows in, down, and in between the two properties. And it's an immense amount of water that comes through that area. The residual water stays along the curbside. The driveway of 1120, which is our property, has deteriorated and the concrete will have to get replaced in that driveway because of the standing water that is continually always there. The water would then continue to run and gush down between the houses, taking all the hillside, the debris down, and it would take it right to the lake. Our backyard would be a brown mud water swamp. After the installation of this concrete, that has since stopped. We've gone to the provisions of putting gutters on both properties, having drainage ran down underneath the concrete so we can have that spillway come out into the backyard so it's clean, fresh water back there. So we believe that we've been trying to be proactive in our efforts in trying to control this issue. The next page, if you go to the next page, please, Donovan. Page number 3. That's an example. This was after just a light rain on 10/10. This was the morning of the zoning commission. That was just light mist rain. Wasn't a heavy rain that day. Now, one advantage that we have gained since we cut out that first 5 feet, and I will be and our neighbors would be happy to, will comply with cutting out that 8.8 feet because that should not be in the public right of way. We realize that. Unfortunately, a contractor poured up to the curb. It shouldn't have been that way. This does give us an area for that water to pool up and soak into the ground a little bit more, which helps that erosion control efforts better yet. And as Donovan stated, there's some biggest concerns that we have is some of the missing information that's available to the city and to the residents of the city. We have no permit is required to pour a concrete patio. There's no permit required to install a driveway. And so we do our due diligence to try to correct a problem, have a safer environment for our homes. And we get a determination. Unfortunately, there was a complaint made because somebody didn't like the concrete we put in, is how this originally is. We're told that transpired, and that's how the city was aware of it. And then the city determines that they're considering it a driveway, when there's no definition of what a driveway is in the zoning code or in the city engineering code.
So unfortunately, we have a big gap that we fell into, which puts ourselves, it puts the city in a really bad position. And now the question I have is, what do we do moving forward for this? What do we do for the rest of the residents here in Forest Lake moving forward? There was a mention by the zoning administrator that the fish house that we have in our backyard was moved onto the property down that driveway slope. Donovan, if you'll continue to, I believe it's about page 6. There, that's the image. There's not enough clearance, height, and the angle of that driveway is too steep to be able to bring that fish house, or any trailer, or that matter of fact, down that embankment. If you could go to the next slide, please. Yes, that slide there. Thank you. And it's a little bit smaller on your screens. My apologies. That was a fish house. We moved that fish house onto our property September 2017. You can see the Edina Realty sign still in the backyard. How did that get brought down into there? If you look real close, the wall is to the north side of the property. It's all eroded. There's no way we could have brought that down. Fortunately, our neighbors to the south of us, they do have what is actually classified as a driveway that abuts right up to our property line. Were kind enough to let us bring that fish house down to our backyard. The only time that fish house has left our property has been in the winter across the frozen lake. It's the only way to take it in and out without asking our neighbors to use their property. And I'm not one that, I don't necessarily want to do that. And most likely after, in the years to come, we'll probably end up having to get, make some changes in having some other ways of getting on or off the ice with our fish house, or just selling the fish house. But that alludes to a lot of the properties around the lake and the issues that we have with the properties in the lake. I think a lot of times we write city codes and we write city zoning ordinances to meet a certain standard. Well, a certain standard doesn't always apply when you're trying to build properties around a lake. Look at all the different bays we have on the property. They're very, very difficult and challenging pieces of property that are around the lake.
All right, thank you. Is the other property owner here too, or?
Yes, they are. I do have one, because there's not an image of it, and I believe Jen has some image of what we envision this piece of shared concrete space to look like. And we have ceased doing anything until we get this piece resolved. Thank you very much for your time.
Jennifer Morozic, I'm at 1120 Bay Drive, Southeast. I do have a picture, do you want me to hand it over?
If you want to just, right on the side of the podium there, you can pull that drawer out, right to your right.
To your right.
Just to your right a little.
Go around.
Oh,
You can just set it right there and everybody will be able to see it.
okay. So, and this was designed by Mr. Yell, but it is, something that we've both discussed throughout this entire process when putting down the concrete. And then the only other thing I'd like to say is that when we go back to the fact that we don't have a definition of a driveway, and if we look at the plain meaning of a driveway is an unobstructed access to the road. We did not, change any of the curb there. It's not actually connected to either of our driveways. There's a gap on both sides. So even with the plain meaning of a driveway, it does not meet that definition.
All right. Thank you. All right, I'll open it up to the council for discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I went and visited the issue there, and there's no question of why they did something. They had to do something there. I think it's a terrible situation. That's been there for years and years and years, and I'm sure they were looking for a solution, but to call it a driveway is really stretching it. it's very steep. I wouldn't even want to walk down it. It's something that's just under controlling water that's going down between the buildings there. So, I mean, if we're not, I think we should need to forget about that definition thing and start looking at, you know, what's the solution beyond what they already have there? How can we make it better? You know, supposedly there's a problem, what's the solution? And then the idea that they have water that's running from the street onto their property is not a good situation. And it seems to me that there's got to be an issue there with the street or the storm drain or something that's going on there. So, how do we stop that? So,
All right.
just a few comments.
Anybody else? Brian?
Dave, are you familiar with that section of storm and gutter there?
Yeah, there's two catch basins on the side. It's a little bit to the south, I think 2 houses down. There's a catch on either side of the street and a storm pipe that runs down to the lake.
Do we have any documented flooding in that area as far as the roadway being underwater?
On heavy rainfalls, there's a few houses along there that'll call and say that they've washed out between the houses, especially this year. Even on that first 90-degree turn, there was a couple that was a catch basin that failed and it went over top of the curb and washed through the yards. I haven't personally received a phone call for either of those two, but they may have called before I was here, so I don't know. But I don't recollect a call coming from this specific area, but.
All right. Mara, your thoughts?
So it's always a tough situation when you're after the fact, and I don't like having these conversations after the fact. It would be better to have them before. But I can also appreciate property owners. There's no specific permitting requirement. I did go back and watch, I was at a portion of the planning commission meeting, but had to leave before this conversation. So I did go back and watch the whole planning commission conversation. And the planning commission gave it a very, in my opinion, thorough evaluation. And it was a unanimous decision. And that is a group that is not afraid of having some, distension. And so they will disagree with each other. And I didn't hear any strong arguments in the planning commission in opposition of staff's decision. I also am looking at the planning commission's, the reasons they cited. So when planning commission makes a decision, important to note, they cite their rationale, and they cited 4 rationale. Installed concrete looks like a driveway, that it functions like a driveway, that it holds vehicles like a driveway. Deeming it a driveway, they come to the conclusion that that there has to be the 5-foot setback from property lines. So I guess I have maybe 2 questions. One question would be, why the strength, why the thickness, and why the rebar? Why such a reinforced piece of concrete if you're not expecting to use it as a driveway? And then I do have ongoing concerns about the fact that we have gone property to property in between the homes. I appreciate that perhaps up by the street it's not wall to wall, but wall to wall between the homes is problematic for private utilities, and just I think we open ourselves up to a host of concerns if we're going to allow that in that situation. So maybe first the question would be to property owners, if we can ask why that construction. That speaks to me of a driveway, but I don't know why you chose that construction. And
Well, we actually have George Hanna from George Contracting, who built it for us, is here this evening. And he could explain in better terms than I personally could myself. So if that would be fine, I'd ask George to speak on our behalf for that reason. Thank you very much.
George Hanna, 2805 Noel Drive, Little Canada. The construction was done by the slope that we're dealing with, and to put in a thinner piece of concrete with no rebar reinforcement is just going to be a disaster. Frost was going to pop it out and it'd be sitting down at the bottom of the hill. I wouldn't have to remove it then, but I guess that was the case. So it was built to last and to stay there.
And is the rebar the same construction on the flat portion as well as the hill?
It's
the whole
continued
thing,
all the way through.
All the way through,
It
okay,
all ties together.
Yeah.
That isn't moving.
okay.
And you know what, that's a standard practice. I don't even know why that's even a consideration. Either they have concrete or they don't. You know, they're trying to keep them washing the thing away, and
Correct.
I know that, like I said before, that's kind of a standard practice. Doesn't matter if you're driving on it or walking on it or just looking at it. And so,
The more rerod, the better.
you bet. It just makes it tougher to tear out. That's the problem with it.
Right.
And there's an old saying, you only put as much rerod in there as that you're willing to tear out, you know?
That's right.
But, so if it's an issue, I mean, we need to help these folks come up with a solution that's gonna be acceptable and so they can move on. Because they do have a definite issue with water running down between the buildings. There's no question about it.
Right. I can comment a couple things. When I took on the project, walking up and down that hill is very tough, and something had to be done. I know other contractors walked away from it. They didn't know how they're gonna do it. I figured a way how to do it, and we got her done. So 35 years in business, I think we know what we're doing, and feel good about that. So I just hope everybody takes a look at it as a solution to the situation that we have there, and the neighbors were both willing to go in on it, and I think we did a bang-up job for them, so.
All right.
Yeah, well, I also watched that planning commission, in fact, that meeting, in fact, I watched it 3 times. Not strictly because of this, but I try and watch every one of the meetings I can get. But anyways, on that commission are 2 architects, I believe there's 2. The decision was unanimous as to, they were questioning, number one, there's so many other ways that if it's truly a water issue, it could have been addressed and far cheaper than what you ended up doing. My biggest issue is the violation of going from almost lot line to lot line with concrete. That's definitely against our ordinance. Whether it's a driveway or whatever you want to call it, it's still against the ordinance. And I can't imagine anybody spending that kind of money, because concrete's not cheap. I'm sure that's a very expensive project you took on. That would not come to the city and say, can I do this? I'm just kind of dumbfounded that someone would spend that kind of money and not even come to the city, and number one, to say, hey, I've got a water problem, what can the city do about it if it's truly a catch basin situation? And then the second part, like I just said, is if I'm gonna spend, and I gotta assume you guys probably got $15,000, $16,000 or more in there, I'd be, even more. I'd be darned if I'm gonna spend that kind of money without being legal. I mean, it just don't make sense to me, unless you really wanted a driveway.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, I watched meeting 2, and I've got thoughts on both sides of it. I think property owners should be able to do whatever they want with their own property, as long as that doesn't infringe upon someone else. But at the same time, we all live within a community with rules and regulations. We're exceeding your impervious surface, we're encroaching on property lines, other things like that. And obviously, that's why one of the neighbors filed a complaint to begin with. We have to treat everybody fairly. We have to treat everybody alike. There's a lot of unique situations. There's a lot of places where variances do apply, but there are some basic 0 points. And, you know, that 30% impervious surface, I think that's one for me. To me, it's a driveway. I don't care if there's a definition or not. It is. I mean, if it was for water, that thing would be swaled down so the water goes in the middle of it. It would be something so you climb up there. I mean, it's also gonna be for, you know, the property owners, very dangerous in the wintertime. That thing's gonna be covered in ice. It's not even safe for the residents. We also have to deal with the fact that, you know, if one of these houses gets sold, you know, it's tough when you have neighbors fighting with each other over something. Those are my considerations here. I mean, I just don't believe this was by any measure, the best answer to water flow and erosion. It is a driveway, and I'm fine with that. I don't care if they have 20 driveways, but you're exceeding the amount of buildable area, impervious area on that piece of property too. And to me, those are really points that, you know, especially with the watershed district, things like that, that, you know, we can't do anything about. Now, if there's a solution to be worked out, I think, you know, you guys would have brought something ahead of time. You know, removing some of the concrete would be okay. If it really is a water problem, there would have been better ways to take care of it. And I cannot believe that there's even remotely enough water that would come from the street to cause that. Any kind of problem like that. I mean, I think that's more coming off the roofs and the property itself, partially because, you know, the impervious area that's there anyway. So, to me, I can't bend on this one. I would really like to, but, you know, we're gonna have every other house along the lake wanting to pave half of their ground. And we can't let, you know, I mean, we've got other you know, the watershed districts, everything else that aren't going to allow that to begin with, so.
So I'm not suggesting that, you know, I wasn't suggesting that it stay. What I'm suggesting is that we got to help them find a solution.
Definitely.
And that's what I
Definitely.
said right from day one.
Yeah.
And so,
Please come up, you know.
yeah.
So if the impervious surface is one of your concerns, we have some sections of concrete that are in the backyard that were existing that I would remove, so we're below. Right now, I believe we're at 29.99% impervious surface, because I physically measured every square inch of our concrete and measured it right down to the 32nd of an inch to get right to the exact amount. The amount that the city has on record is incorrect, and that was in some of the documentation that you received. But I would be willing to remove an additional piece of concrete in our backyard to make sure that we're not close to that 30%. And then also, one of your other concerns you mentioned was the worried about the properties being adjacent to each other. We've have an easement that's ready to be drafted. It's already actually drafted for the property is one other suggestion I was going to make. And then I guess those were the two things I wanted to say. Any other questions or clarifications I could
I would have
help
liked
with?
I would have liked to see in some of the exhibits maybe photographs of the water reaching that level, where it would actually go over the crown and down the backyards. Any other attempts at stabilizing that hill? I'm looking at Class 5 road gravel here. That has absolutely no slope holding abilities. There's some vegetation next to the houses that's doing stable. I solve water issues all the time with landscaping efforts, and the craftsmanship on that slab it's nice, and I understand the appeal of it, but it wouldn't be a measure I would suggest. I wouldn't want to go down that road. My biggest issue is going to be twofold. One, the encroachment on the property line. Kind of like the mayor had talked about, giving every resident the liberty to do what they want, up to the point of somebody else's infringement. And per se, either one of you were to sell your houses, whether you have that agreement or not, it's still going to be something that the next homeowner is going to have to deal with. Concrete needs maintenance. It's going to be a headache down the road someone's not going to be happy with. If you guys were to alter the concrete to a point where it stays off the property lines as our code specifies, that's something I could probably live with.
When we purchased our property in September of 2017, the property adjacent to ours, I mean, literally right next door, has a blacktop driveway that runs right down the property line, and there was nothing that was in any of our documentation when we purchased that property, our property.
It was probably something that was done without record, similar to this one. I know we don't have a very clear driveway permit, however, we do have engineering standards, and those specify how close to the roadway you can go, or how close to the property lines you can go, your maximum width and et cetera. Had you approached Donovan and asked him, you know, what your plans were doing, we could have worked a little more fluidly at a solution. We wouldn't be sitting here today like we are now, and it's not a great position to let somebody know that their money's gonna have to be torn out or anything of that nature, but that's the way I'm leaning. So it's unfortunate. We'd rather work with you up front than fight you on the tail of it. And I'd hate to see a nicely done project have to get chopped apart in pieces just into compliance.
Yeah, it's a shame that the city's website and under your permit applications and, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, you have some gaps that, you know, we're not gonna be the first property owner. It probably won't be the last property owner that's gonna be affected by a situation like this.
I would still go back to what I said before, that if you had questions as to, like you just said, there's some gaps, that would be another reason to contact the city before going ahead and doing something. And to put a variance after the fact, to me, is not a variance. I mean, the variance should have been requested before you did the work.
But unfortunately, there was no question in our mind
Well-
that it shouldn't have been there, or we couldn't have did what we did.
If you were a subdivision with townhomes, that's where you can see different allowances for property lines, et cetera, shared driveways, things of that nature. But I thought about replacing my driveway at one point too. I looked online, didn't find what I wanted. I gave Donovan a phone call. He got back to me right away with what the engineering standards were. It was one of those things, before I even thought about calling a contractor, I wanted to see what my options were. It's the wise thing to do.
Right, and I guess like you said, you were replacing a driveway when we weren't doing a driveway. So, thank you.
We're under a timetable of X amount of days that we have to act on this appeal. Is there?
I mean, officially, it's not a land use application. I defer to the attorney on any sort of timeline, but I believe it doesn't have that sort of like a 60-day rule, you know, time clock.
Well,
So,
oh,
Donovan, city staff's, their recommendation is what as a solution? It has to be torn out?
Well, the enforcement letters say that it needs to be removed, except for that portion which is not within that 5-foot setback. You know, outside of that, outside the actual enforcement is, we you know, encourage the property owners to approach the city. It is something we do work with property owners on, whether it's the public issue of water in the gutter or other side issues. You know, it's something that, you know, Ryan and I talk about drainage on properties rather frequently, and we do make, you know, site visits to you know, speak with applicants, speak with property owners, and so that, you know, that those resources are available.
Can I just speak on that point?
go right ahead.
So Donovan did refer back to 2010, when we were the property owners on 1120 Bay Drive. We had encroached the right-of-way, which we removed when we found that out. We'd also put boulders there, because that curb, in the winter particularly when it starts to snow, it's a downhill slope, and cars go around it too fast, and oftentimes jump that curb. I was told I couldn't have the boulders up by the curb. And I said, well, you know, we're just trying to protect our property and the home. And this is my first contact with the city. I was told I knew about that curb when I moved in. So, you know, I don't contact the city because, you know, I knew about it when I moved in. That slope was there when I moved in. So just to address that. Additionally, numerous things have been tried on that over the years. We have a neighbor that has lived there for 20 years. And they did try planting some sort of weeds to grow there, and those didn't stay. When we moved in there were like black slate rocks with some underneath, like a plastic, isn't that what? Yeah. But that didn't hold either. There were big furrows and trenches in there. So, I mean, we have tried other solutions. But, you know, I apologize if we didn't contact the city, but my experience with the city has not been good in the past.
Ed?
I have a question. Were you the owner of the property where that Donovan described, where the pavement was put in and then had to be removed?
Yes.
That
But
was-
we had to remove it from the right-of-way,
And that was back in 2000?
2010.
So I guess that even brings a bigger red flag to me, is if you went through this before, why would you not be contacting the city before you took on another project like this?
Well, as I said, I didn't have a great experience the first time. I was told to deal with it myself. And secondly, we did talk about the right-of-way with George, you know, so we can't encroach on the right-of-way because I knew that rule.
But you did.
Well,
That was a mistake
Yeah.
by the crew. The crew had actually finished up and ran out of concrete, and they went out and got another truck full of concrete to finish out to the street. The right-of-way was a mistake. We knew not to do the right-of-way, and we were planning on stopping.
and George has helped us remove part of that. We do know we have to remove more, which we will do, but we wanted to.
But on the previous concrete, the very first one you did, that turned out to be illegal. And you
The
had to,
right-of-way.
and you had to,
right-of-way.
and you had to remove it on the
And we
right of
removed
way.
it from the right-of-way. We were not aware
All
of
right,
the
so I'm clear on
right-of-way
that,
issue.
but then the second part of that is, you took on a very similar project without checking with the city. I'm just baffled, I just don't make any sense.
Staying off of the right-of-way.
Yeah,
Our
they went
plan
on
was
the
to
right-of-way,
stay off
that's
of the
all.
right-of-way.
Yeah.
We figured as long as we were beyond the right-of-way that
No, my point is, whether it's a driveway, whether it was a patio, whatever it was, you had a situation with the city where you had an investment and you had lost that investment because you had to remove it. So why would you take another investment without
because we
checking with the
learned from the
city?
first of the mistake of concreting the right-of-way. And this plan was, our plan was to not concrete the right-of-way. That was a mistake, not of our doing.
Whether it was the intent to slip one by or not, I still don't think that it can be left as is.
I agree, I don't think it can be left as is. You know, with an architect, something involved, they might be able to come up with a solution. I don't think it's our job, our responsibility to try and come up with solutions. But I would deny the appeal right now, but I would think that if they could come up with a reasonable solution, the planning commission could look at it again. If that involved removing some, not all, changing it to make it in compliance with the 30%.
If I can make a suggestion, why don't we delay this to a date certain and give the applicants, their architect or their landscaper, and the city an opportunity to see if there's a solution to it. You know, give them 30 days to a date certain, the next certain meeting. If there's no solution, there's no solution. We can't promise there is one. But at least now that there seems to be some willingness on the council to find a solution if there is one.
But
Let's-
you're nearing the end of the construction period now, too.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, well, if they come up with something, they'd have to do it in spring.
Yeah,
But we're not under a 90-day rule or anything like that on an appeal to either approve or deny it. So we could table this without getting the city or them being able to bypass it just because of the delay, correct?
Your Honor, Mayor, members of the council, that's correct. So this is an appeal of a determination made by the Community Development Director / zoning administrator. It's not a land use application, so there isn't a 60-day deadline. The appeal timeframe is established by city code, is merely related to the filing of the appeal. So once the appeal is filed, then the city can schedule the hearing after that. So if the council had the desire to continue the hearing, then the motion would be to continue the hearing in this matter to, and then fill in the blank with the date certain, whichever council meeting the council wishes to direct that item be continued to.
What I'm hearing is that the consensus of the council is that this should be gone and start over. That's what I'm hearing. And
I don't think there's a way that it can
Right.
be brought into compliance. I think it is an improvement over what was there,
Right.
but it also opens up a safety issue. with
I'm
our
not arguing that. I'm just suggesting that maybe we should be, they should be thinking about perhaps putting in a terraced area or something like that. And how would that affect their non-impervious surface? I mean, if it's terraced down, that's pervious, isn't it? I mean,
There are many cases, it's on a case-by-case basis, I look at that, because when you're doing terrace walls, you actually are decreasing the amount of runoff. So it achieves a similar purpose as reducing impervious, because you are trapping water, so there's greater amount of infiltration. My conversation with the Rice Creek watershed staff, for instance, depends on how the water is being, directed, but they don't see it as addition to impervious. And as Mr. Yella, mentioned, there is conversations I do have with property owners around, if there is a greater amount of impervious, other impervious can be removed. I mean, really the percentage is just the percentage, and how it's used on property is, up to the property owner.
Your Honor, if I could just follow up on that. So again, I know there's an impervious surface issue and component, but that is a separate issue that isn't really before the council squarely tonight. So what's squarely before the council in its role as hearing an appeal of the determination of the community development director / zoning administrator is whether or not the concrete constitutes a driveway. So if there's something that can be done to it that would then make it not constitute a driveway, it's a different situation. If it's a driveway, it's either a driveway or a driveway. I mean, essentially, I just want to clarify and crystallize that that's the determination we made.
I guess just last question then, and it seems like that's where we're leaning, if we determine this as a driveway, that doesn't preclude them from coming back with a plan, maybe partially being able to salvage what they've got invested in there, but change it to something else, correct? They'd have an X amount of time to remove it or come up with a plan.
So Mayor, members of the council, I mean, should the determination be made this evening that it is in fact, or upheld that it's a driveway, it's contemplated that the council would make findings to support that conclusion, that there would be some type of timeframe established for removal or I guess I should say transformation of what the council has determined is a driveway into something else, some type of, anything that's not a driveway. Because ultimately what the code says you can't have within that 5-foot setback area is a driveway. If it's not a driveway, then we don't have this problem. So that's one
That
option.
landscaping would not constitute a problem with setbacks.
If the issue in the provision of the code that's at subject here and at play here is the prohibition on driveways within the setback area. So should the council uphold that determination, then the appellants have the right to appeal to district court, should they so choose to. Alternatively, they have the right to come back to the city and they could seek a variance and proceed that way if they wanted to. A variance saying, okay, it's a driveway, but now we are seeking an after-the-fact variance to allow it there. And third, they could come back and say, we're going to transform this into something else, and then it would be a determination as to whether or not that something else is no longer a driveway.
Donovan, if that were a patio, would the 5-foot ruling still apply?
Yeah, it actually gets
So it
becomes
really doesn't
stricter.
make any difference if it's a
No,
driveway. You can't have concrete
There are,
that
I
close
mean,
to the lot line.
If it's, unless it's redefined, unless we can decide something else. For instance, retaining walls, window wells, other plantings may be placed in any yard except the drainage ways and street rights of way. So if there were retaining walls also holding that soil in place on that slope, those would be allowed to, span across the property line.
Was that patios are not allowed?
They have to be 7 feet from the property line.
So even farther back?
I'm sorry?
Even farther back than the 5 foot of a
Correct,
driveway.
yeah. Steps, sidewalks, terraces, and unenclosed stoops may extend only 3 feet into the 10-foot required setback.
Okay. So I think, or, Mark?
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think Bridget laid out pretty much what, our job is tonight, determine whether it's a driveway or not, but that ultimately doesn't stop them from possibly being able to re-engineer that within a reasonable amount of time and come back. Hopefully that would go through the planning commission before it comes to the council again then?
That would be simply a site improvement that, staff would work with the property owner.
All right, well, I think I would want, planning commission to review it, so that they're involved in it as well.
Okay.
All right?
Are you looking for a motion to table tonight, a decision?
I think to me, it's clear it's a driveway. And, my struggle with it was,
What
they should be
next?
able to do on their property what they want to within reason. And if they can not have to tear the whole thing out, and possibly utilize that to some benefit for erosion, and still, come in under that 30% rule, I think that would be a reasonable compromise in a situation like this. But, the moment you look at it, it's a driveway, in my mind anyway. If it was there and any contractor, anybody, if it was there for water, it would have a swale in it. You don't want that water running to those two foundations, you want it running away to the middle. It would have catch basins, would have something to it. So, yeah, it's definitely a driveway, in my opinion, but, we can take a vote, make a motion, see what's next, but I just want to make sure that, this isn't the end of the line, that they just have to get the jackhammers and start tearing it out, but to be able to maybe salvage some of that and close it off, put posts in there, do something, and then, bring back some ideas that work with staff on.
I make a motion to uphold the
Findings of fact.
planning commission's findings.
I'll second.
Mayor's
got
member
to-
council, if you could actually state the findings of fact, the reasons why, Commissioner Bacchus, that you state it's a driveway.
On page 3.
These were the findings.
I make a motion to pass resolution number 11-05-2018-06, upholding the planning commission's ruling of,
You want to read there's their findings of fact right here. Yep.
under the findings of fact that A, installed concrete looks like a driveway, B, installed concrete functions like a driveway, and C, installed concrete holds vehicles like a driveway.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further conversation? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
One opposed. Oh, I'm sorry, Sam, I didn't hear that. And one opposed.
As a follow-up to that, can we instruct city staff to work with the applicant on what's next? What we haven't done is we haven't defined a timeline for resolution. And if we could instruct city staff to work with the property owner on and bring back suggested next steps. I think the resolution contemplates a deadline, and I feel like we're not, as council, ready to do that. And so if we could table that what next until staff has had an opportunity to work with the property owner, I think that'd be appropriate.
Table 30 days, 60, 90.
I think it's, the issue now is the big fact that winter's on its way, and I think they need to have more time than that to get it resolved and make some sort of a spring project out of it. That's all I can see.
That, I agree.
I would like to see a plan in 30 days, though.
I don't
Well,
think that's, I don't think
I
it's
don't
enough
think we can
time.
do that.
I don't think it's enough time.
Yeah, I think part of that is, you know, it's the property owner's option to, you know, want to bring something forward. I think they're welcome to sit down with city staff at any time and, you know,
The other
run some
issue,
ideas across the table anyway.
the other issue is that what Bridget just brought up, they can appeal this. It could actually go to court. And so, I don't think, I think we got to give this plenty of time and talk to the applicants and see what the options are, and maybe in the meantime, they can be talking to some landscape artist or some, I don't know what the solution is, but we need to try to figure out something here, because there is an issue with water going down that, between those houses, period. And they've done everything they can to keep it from happening, the gutters and all, what else are they gonna do? So, if that's a driveway and it can't be, it's held up as a driveway, which means it can't be there, then there's gotta be something that they can do to alleviate that washing out. So.
I agree with you, Sam. Bridget?
So, Your Honor, if I may clarify, what happened, the council took its action, determined it was a driveway. There was no specific deadline included in the motion for removal, but my understanding and what I'm hearing the council say is that there's a general consensus amongst the council members that there won't be any specific enforcement action taken at this time towards the driveway. So essentially, the specific enforcement action that could be taken is either through issuance of a criminal citation or through a civil litigation piece. But that's not the council's intent. The council's intent is to have staff work with the property owners regarding this issue and to figure out how to address the fact that it's been determined this is a driveway, with the understanding that it's cold and snowy and that any probably physical modifications to what exists there at this time wouldn't happen until such time as construction permits. Am I summarizing correctly, just for clarity's sake?
In my mind, you are.
As far, yes, in
Yes.
my mind, yes, but I still would like to see a timetable of communication. Or staff should bring back to us that, you know, we gotta give them X amount of days to remove the concrete.
Yeah, the big thing about it, if you're gonna enforce removing of it, let's have something in plan and ready to go to replace it right away, so it's not just sitting there with nothing happening. And so that plan needs to be in place, I believe, and I think they should have plenty of time to do that, so.
I agree.
Because we are rolling into both holidays and winter, is 90 days too long? To bring back a plan and?
I don't think it is too long. I don't think it is.
I think we need to know, you know, within 30 days if they're going to intend to work on a plan or if they're gonna appeal it to court
steps.
or whatever. Because I'd like to give them the option of figuring out the next step and working with us. I don't wanna give them any more ultimatums anyway. Just let's let them discuss what the next step is and.
Request of
Go forward.
indication of next steps within 30 days and then up to 90 days to resubmit a plan, if they choose to do so.
I can agree
At
to
least you
that.
find out what their intent is, you know, so 30 days for the intent and what they want to do. Yeah.
So, Mayor, members of the council, procedurally, then, is this a modification to the resolution that was just passed, or is this just step 2, which is?
Step 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I would like to make a motion to give the property owner up to 30 days to indicate intent of next steps. And should you choose to submit a plan of action, up to 90 days to work with the city to bring forward that plan.
I'll second that.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. 7C, ordinance updates. Bailey.
Mayor and council members, tonight before you, staff has compiled 4 licensing and fee ordinances for proposed elimination on the city's fee schedule. Those include the license for taxi cab and limousines, license fee for dog licensing, fertilizer applicator licensing, and a local permit fee for a nonprofit charitable gambling permit for excluded and exempted gambling. The proposed ordinances were brought forward before council in June and again in September for feedback and suggestions. And tonight staff is recommending approval to eliminate the mentioned ordinances, the mentioned license and their fees. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bailey. Yeah, this is finally wrapping up what we've discussed several times. I don't have any further questions. I don't know if any of the council members do.
Thing to death for a while.
And are we gotta, do we do these one at a time then, or can we lump some of them all together?
I'd recommend, Mayor, members of the council, that you just go through one by one and create a clear record of the approval of each ordinance, starting with 681, if that's council's will.
All right, sounds good.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we approve ordinance 681.
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we go on to 682.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion we approve ordinance 682.
Second.
second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll continue on my roll, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion we approve ordinance 683.
I'll second it again.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And Mr. Mayor, make a motion we approve ordinance 684.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Dave?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to discuss painting of streetlights, banner poles, and one traffic light. Earlier this summer, we were directed by council to take a look in painting the streetlights and banner poles along Broadway and Lake Street as the salt is kind of taking a toll and they're beginning to rust. With existing funds in 18, we were able not only to get the 3 traffic lights painted on Broadway, the one on 19th and the Everton going south and the Everton going north by Menards and then Cub Foods. So we got those 3 traffic lights and all of the banner poles and street lights down to the pedestrian bridge by Centennial. So in 19, we would like to finish the banner poles and street lights on Lake Street as well as getting the traffic light painted on 12th and 3rd. If you've been on that area, that one's in pretty rough shape. We'd also like to turn it blue as well to start kind of getting a trend. That used to be a county road and it's the old yellow, so we'd like to get that one blue as well. The reason why I'm here tonight is twofold. The first is I'm seeking approval a little bit early. It already is in the budget for 19, but the poles that are getting painted are the ones that have the hanging baskets on them. And if we can get locked in right now, we'd be on the first list of the contractor and they'd be able to get these poles painted before we put the baskets up versus put up the baskets, take them down, have them painted, and then put them back up again. So that is the first reason. The second reason is OLS Restoration was the low bid. Their bids on here, they were about $1,500, a little bit more lower than the second bid, Pole Painting Plus. But I had them in their bid describe their work, and Pole Painting Plus has a better epoxy primer and they coat the bottom 7 feet twice. They paint the pole twice versus just one coat. And I think just how we've seen the rust in that has happened there, I think that extra, $1,500 to $2,000 is well worth that investment if we can get it longer advantage over that or longer time. With that said, we're budgeted in 2019 for $20,000 for streetlight improvements. So this would come to $20,780. So we just need to update that in the fund balance for 2019. With that, I'm happy to discuss any questions.
Dave, are they the ones that did the ones that are already painted?
Pole Painters Plus did the poles and the banner poles. The traffic lights, we piggybacked under Washington County and OLS actually.
But I mean, did they do the work? Of the ones that are done, that we
Of the
just
banner
completed?
poles and street lights, the traffic lights were done by a separate contractor. They were under Washington County, so.
Because the poles look great.
What was
The
it?
poles look great.
Yeah, they really popped that. I think that second coat also makes them, they shine really good. So I think just from what they said they would do and the way that looks, I think, it's worth that little extra money to, I think that 2 coats of paint and that epoxy primer that kind of seals that moisture out is well worth that extra dollar amount.
Are these also the people that are looking at the color of the texture of the concrete?
They are not, that'll be, that's.
That's somebody else?
Different. That's be in concrete. we've talked to them as well, have brought out curb masters and we've gone over it, and I think our best bet is to try to do a test section and see what we can do, what we can't do. I mean, you could go full blown and spend 150,000, or you could, power wash it off and go with some kind of a sealer just to shine it up for half that price. So I think that's still under discussion of where we want to go with that going forward.
That's good. I just did notice there's one technicality is that it says 2018 instead of 2019 on their bid sheets. So, not a big deal, just get that re-clarified on there.
Yeah, I haven't even written up the exact contract for them yet. It's just, I was seeking approval before I go through the work of getting them to sign and all that stuff locked in. And in the contract, it'll be standard verbiage that if we don't have the funding, we can cancel the contract as well. So if we get to that point where something happens or we change our mind, we can always do that as well. But if we can get them locked in right now, then it'll save Public Works a lot of time too, just putting up the basket and taking them down. So they're in the contract, they'll be by the 24th, by Memorial Day weekend, they have to have them done, weather dependent. I mean, if it's 30 degrees until Memorial Day, obviously they're not gonna get them done, but we won't have the baskets up either, so.
I think it's, well worth the money to get them done and keep them looking good. Do you need a motion or anything, or just consensus of the council?
Direction would be fine, and then I'd come back with the contract later on.
I don't know if we all agree on that or not, but yeah,
I appreciate the more thorough quote and the better craftsmanship, and it's always worth the investment and the scope of the cost of the project, I think.
I agree. Well, go ahead, Dave. Thank you. All right, that brings us to Ace Hardware invoices.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion, we approve the Ace Hardware invoices.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
One abstain. And Winnick Supply invoices.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to pay the Winnick Supply invoices.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And one abstain in there as well. Staff updates. Donovan?
Yes, sir. Mayor, members of council, we have a busy planning commission agenda next week, including a site plan review of a redeveloped BP site over by the interstate on Broadway. A couple sign conditional use permit amendments for the high school and middle school. And so things are moving along there. Happy to take any questions from y'all.
All right. Any questions for Donovan? Dan?
Tree lighting ceremony date has been set. It'll be on November 25th from 3 to 5. So that'll be on that Sunday after Thanksgiving is when the tree will be up and lit for 2018.
All right. Any questions for Dan? Bailey?
Nothing from me, thank you.
All right, thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, we just need, I need the board to, we have to have a special meeting to do the election canvass, and we need the board to have a special meeting to do that. And the county is requesting us to do that during the week of the 13th through the 16th. So if you can arrange a date here before we leave.
Don't we have a meeting that week anyway, or no?
It's Veterans Day is on the 12th, so we do not have a meeting on Monday. So that leaves you Tuesday through Friday to do the canvas meeting.
I'm available any of the days. I mean, it'd probably best to do it at like 6 o'clock or something. Or
Tuesday would be okay?
Tuesday is fine with me. I don't know if anybody.
Is there any way we could do Wednesday, the 14th,
It's up to you.
right before planning commission perhaps? 6 o'clock, Wednesday, the 14th?
It's up to you.
That's fine with me too. I
And
mean,
Wednesday at 6?
Yeah, that works.
November 14th?
Yes.
Thank you.
Somebody, if somebody can declare, or.
I'll declare a special meeting on Wednesday, the 14th at 6 PM.
Well, yeah, either two council members or.
I'll second.
Do we have to state the purpose?
So Mayor, members of the council, statutory city, we either need to have the mayor call the meeting by filing a written request for the meeting with the city clerk declaring the purpose of the meeting or 2 members of the council. So I believe Bailey has some prepared documents, so whichever course of action, mayor,
I can
council members. Just somebody sign the paper before you leave today, if you would, please.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Patrick, anything else from you? Or?
No.
All right. Bridget, anything?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. And Ryan?
No updates this evening unless you guys have any questions.
I have a question. I don't know if it's for you or for Dave. I got an email from a resident, and maybe she emailed the entire council. Was there another accident at North Shore Trail and 97 this last week, maybe?
Yes.
Yes. We were gonna do some work on perhaps a light request, and just wanted to make sure that was still in play. It's on your list. I'll let you talk. Okay.
As soon as we got some pictures and some information from the police department, we forwarded to MnDOT right away and have been in conversations too. So they're aware of it. And
Any critical injuries, or what was the nature of the accident?
so my understanding, it was a car heading eastbound, sitting in the left turn lane, and a car behind him that was waiting, and a vehicle came up, didn't even have time to apply the brakes and hit that car behind the other one. And I don't know anything other than that at this time.
It's a problem.
Dave?
Just to touch on that, I did get a response back from Xcel Energy. They quoted us to add 2 14,000 lumen lights, one on the north and south side to light up that intersection for a price of $840 to add the 2 lights and a pole. So I told them to go ahead with writing up a contract, and as soon as I get that signed, I'll put it on their workload.
Was that accident at night or during the day?
I do not know.
Okay, we can get more info,
Can't remember.
but lights would help. It's at least a start.
All right. Anything else, Dave?
That's all I have unless you have anything from you.
Suppose plow trucks are all ready to roll?
Unfortunately.
Sam?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I attended this school board meeting, which took place last Thursday, and it's just basically updates on what's going on with the building projects and that sort of thing, and the excavating that everybody thinks is a big pool going in over at the, which isn't, in driveways and that sort of thing. And then, of course, the big subject is whether or not how the referendum's gonna do tomorrow night, or tomorrow during the day, so that was about it.
All right, thank you. Ed?
No report.
All right. Yeah, we had the EDA meeting tonight. Discussion on business park property was the main topic, a couple other things. So that's moving ahead to getting some land appraisals. We've got some preliminary numbers on construction costs for roads and utilities, things like that. So once we get the appraisals, we're also gonna look at what, potential tax revenue is for that. Got a senior center meeting coming up this week, and nothing else really big on the agenda, except for obviously the vote tomorrow, and everybody who hasn't gotten out to vote yet, I think we're gonna have a great turnout anyway. Minnesota usually does, and weather might slow down a few people, but hopefully they get out and voice their opinions anyway. Blaine?
Nothing new from the last meeting now, but Parks, Trails, Lakes have a workshop on the 14th, and Fire Board will have its last joint Fire Board meeting on the 29th of this month for the year.
All right. And Mara?
Just a quick reminder for everyone to get out and vote, and also if you're a precinct 2 voter, and if you formerly had voted at St. Peter's, reminder that your location is actually in council chambers this year, so quick location change sometimes follows people up. Hope everyone makes it. That's all.
And then we have closed session.
I make a motion to move to the closed session, to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 13D.03, subdivision 1B, to consider strategy for labor negotiations, including negotiation strategies or developments or discussions, and review of labor negotiation proposals. conducted pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 179A.01 to 179A.25, with the following unions: AFSLME, representing the clerical and non-exempt staff, 49ers representing Public Works, and MAPE representing management. Closed meeting will be held in the Forest Lake Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed meeting is completed, the city council will reconvene the open meeting portion of tonight's city council meeting in the council chambers. There being no further items in the agenda, once back in open session, the council will simply adjourn the meeting.
All right, we have a motion. Can we get a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, meeting is now closed.